So welcome to this very special Tuesday discussion. As you know, our Tuesday discussions are normally upstairs in the seminar room. So this is, I think, the first time that we have a Tuesday discussion in a different space. It's also the first time that the Tuesday discussion corresponds with the opening of an exhibition. And I think it's also the first time that we have actually 3 people who are part of the discussion, and a diverse set of people, even though they work together. And it's also the first time that we have champagne after the Tuesday discussion. So, welcome. My name is Christoph Mauch. I'm the director of the Rachel Carson Center, and together with Ingrid Rügemer, the director of graduate programs, we are doing the Tuesday discussions. We are alternating. I'm doing 2, then Ingrid is doing 2, etc. So it's my pleasure to introduce this team. A very special team who is responsible for this exhibition, even though they didn't do the artwork, but they are the gallerists, if you will, and the curators, and they've brought the exhibition here, and they have also been involved in the production of the exhibition. Oliver Szasz, he has been with us before. He brought his students from, he's a professor of design at Macromedia University here in Munich. And he once brought his students who introduced their work here in the Tuesday discussion. And then there is, today I really need a piece of paper, which I normally don't, but today I do need it, even though I should know that this is Ingrid Rügemer. She's a gallerist and curator who has her own gallery called Culture Sphere in Neuhausen. And then we have Tina Heger, and Tina is a biologist who teaches at the Technical University. She teaches renaturalization, which is something that we are all interested in. And together they've been involved in this exhibition. I thought it was really interesting to see what Oliver is interested in terms of methodology and his, normally you say, what is your discipline? I say history, other people say mathematics, and he says it's transdisciplinary innovation, regenerative approaches, and organizational transformation. So you want the world to change, and I think that the title of the exhibition is also telling, because it's nature, people, future, or people, nature, people come first. People come before nature, but you cannot really distinguish nature and people here. And when I asked them, what is it that is your relationship within this project with nature, they each had their answer. One of them, Oliver, would say he's rather sensitive to cold temperatures. He needed constant supply of hot drinks and heat patches as body warmers. Ingrid said that she suffers from all sorts of plant allergies, which is not ideal when you have to go in the forest, and therefore the relationship with nature was a little bit troubled, but she still curated the project. And Tina said that she loves nature, and she's been portrayed. So Tina, you must be in one of the portraits?
The first
portrait, very hidden. We'll have a chance to look at it later on. I can't wait to hear first from Oliver, and then Tina and Ingrid will also be involved in the discussion. Join me in welcoming the group, the Symbio scene group. Symbio scene will learn about what it is. Yeah, you'll explain to us what it is. Another scene, Anthropocene, Capitalocene, all these scenes. But Symbio scene is a Munich invention, and this group invented it, and they will tell us what it's all about. So join me in welcoming Oliver, Ingrid, and Tina.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So hello again, thank you very much, Christoph Mauch. Wonderful introduction, and thank you very much that we can be here today. It's a great opportunity. And welcome to everybody here. Great amount of people have joined up. This is wonderful. So my presentation will last approximately 15 minutes. I'm supposed to do only 10 minutes, but I'm extending 5 minutes. I hope this is okay, but only 5 minutes. So let's get started. First of all, you can see we have 2 different logos here at the bottom. This is Macromedia University. This is the university where I work as a design professor, and next is our NGO that I will introduce at the very end of this presentation. So the presentation is called Reimagine Artistic Approaches and Interventions as Catalysts for Transformative Metaphors and Narratives of Alternative Futures. Sounds very complicated, It will not get much easier in this presentation, I have to tell you, because we're looking a little bit at philosophical aspects. So please bear with me and let's go through that. So I'm going to look into a couple of interesting aspects like making sense of the world. We start with that. Then we're going to look into why we are in a process of continuous estrangement from nature. And then I will continue to look at artifacts and agency. Then we move a little bit more into design. And then we will briefly touch the reciprocal design process, being exposed to an environment. And then, of course, we touch briefly the need for change we are all very much aware of. And then we look a little bit at Symbio cene, which is the concept behind our organization. You might have noticed already a different spelling, but I will go into that in a minute. So, making sense of the world. Let's start with a philosophical perspective. In the first half of the 20th century, Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger and others have introduced phenomenology. You probably are very familiar with that as a new philosophical perspective and discipline. And why is this interesting for design and the arts? We are dealing with design and the arts, so we see it as a creative discipline. This relates to the differentiation to other philosophical disciplines that looked rather into logic than human experiences, because on the one hand, phenomenology explores the characterization of sensory qualities such as seeing and hearing, etc. But on the other hand, it addresses the meaning things have in our experience, notably the significance of objects, events, and tools as these things are experienced in our real sensual world. So, this means we are trying to explore and make sense of the world through our senses, naturally. This is how we perceive the world. But as we grow older and start to use language, we begin to comprehend that not everything we experience and learn through experiencing can be put easily into words. This leads us to the distinction of explicit and implicit knowledge, also called tacit knowledge, a concept introduced by Michael Polanyi in the 1950s or so, 1958. So tacit knowledge can be defined as skills and ideas and experiences, and in order to effectively transfer tacit knowledge, for instance, this is interesting in this field, it requires usually a very personal context or contact. Also, it is revealed through practice most of the time. So this kind of knowledge and how it is being generated is particularly relevant in the context of sense making. Yeah? How do we make sense of the world? Which is when cognition functions as the person's active process of understanding the world. So it's basically the cognition that is happening in the process of sense making. So now we are coming to a phenomenon that I wanted to include because I find it super interesting that we discuss this. We only have a little bit time to touch this field, but I think it's really necessary. For instance, it's very necessary to consider that the specific classical modernist philosophical perspective has been a major driver of for a certain culture of unsustainability. Yeah? A culture of unsustainability. This worldview, which started gradually in the 18th century, has an overwhelming focus on objectivity, as you know, and considers subjectivity and tacit knowledge as a meaningless embellishment, yeah? Or even worse, it's going to be rejected with contempt as a fantasy or an illusion or a product of imagination only. So before the 1500, a pre-modern religious worldview was dominant, as you know, before the Enlightenment. This means that there was a strong link between material and spiritual phenomena, between facts and values, and the spheres of science and ethics were largely undifferentiated. The focus of science during this period was of understanding the meaning and the significance of things, and the Western Sorry, different slide. Sorry, I'm sorry about that. Bit unfamiliar with this technology. 1 second. Yeah, again, the focus of sciences during this period was of understanding the meaning and significance of things rather than on predicting or prediction and control. So after the Enlightenment, or when the Enlightenment started in the 16th century, the medieval worldview started to change radically, and the spheres of science, art, and values started to split, and the independence of reason was declared. This has led to gradually to an estrangement from the natural environment. So we're moving on. So the Western vision of nature in the modernity turned therefore away from magic nature to nature as a machine. And we only have to disassemble the machine piece by piece in order to understand and even possess nature entirely. So defining nature in that way, it is completely, so that nature is completely independent of human beings and separate from us. Nature came to be seen as the other, as we can see here, as humans being outside looking in. Subsequently, we started to perceive our biological species as being transformed into a cultural species. So, now we're moving on to the roots of modern Western worldview that is usually attributed to by most authors to the heritage of René Descartes and his postulated radical separation of the immaterial human mind from the natural world. So this is the Cartesian dualism you're all familiar with its emphasis on scientific knowledge, orderliness, practicability, homogeneity, and certainty. This worldview also implies that nature can be comprehended entirely with scientific means and methods. So this worldview in the modernism has had a significant influence on people's attitudes towards the environment, as its mechanistic view has allowed for the exploitation of nature. So, something happened in the 20th century, though. We had new developments, for instance, Einstein's relativity and quantum theory, systems theory. I pointed here out a couple of things, cybernetics, and more. And more, yeah. And this means that we all of a sudden have a different understanding of the world. And this is really crucial for the 20th century because something has happened that made it less predictable. So you can say that the postmodern view of the world, this is now the postmodernism we are in, the postmodern view of the world is in comparison not subject to any type of grand plan anymore, yeah, like we had before the Enlightenment, and there's no reference to any particular larger truth or meta-narrative. Rather, the world is comprised of an indefinite number of agencies, yeah, that generate meaning. And these agencies can be manifold. Yeah? It could be all kinds of things. For instance, in the social sciences, it would be more like communities, maybe specific disciplines, social institutions, and so on. So we talk about agency now. And this agency has also very much to do with design. Now we're moving into design, because designing means producing not only useful and beautiful things, but also agents of meaning. Using narratives and visual metaphors, by using narratives and visual metaphors. This agency of objects and artifacts in our understanding the world has been also discussed by Bruno Latour, a philosopher everybody is familiar with, but also Graham Harman. Both have developed interesting philosophical concepts. I will touch them just very briefly. Bruno Latour has introduced the actor network theory. I'm not sure if you have ever encountered that. The actor network theory is an approach to social theory where everything in the social and the natural worlds exists in constantly shifting networks of relationships. So it's about things, but in relationship, in networks. This is very much the actor network theory, very briefly explained. And Graham Harman, he speaks about the object-oriented ontology, which focuses more on the objects individually and posits that the anthropocentrism is actually the privileging of humans as subjects over and against non-human beings as objects, and emphasizes the need to understand the agency of objects beyond the perception of humans. So the world is designed. Yeah, we are all very much familiar with design. Design is everywhere. I made just a couple of examples you're all very familiar with, from product design, graphic design, as I said, but also architecture, for instance, systems design, many different kinds of design disciplines we have available. And just a couple of more examples, everybody's familiar with that. It has very much to do with communication, understanding the world, and we also see all kinds of impact that design has in our world. And it is clear that it has agency over our behavior and how we see the world. So also nature is obviously designed. Even the genomes are being designed today, and there's hardly any place left in the world where no impact of design is visible. So, to sum up, every object put out into the world has an impact on our environment, including ourselves. So you could say design also designs. Yeah? And this is a quite hefty example. Everybody's familiar with Barbie, yeah? And this lady, she actually transformed herself. That's her real self, yeah. Also, this is her real body, so she transformed herself to become Barbie. So this is a quite impactful description how design transforms our understanding, for instance, in this case, about beauty. So design has surely significantly designed the world, absolutely, yeah, including also to some extent the situation we're in right now. And it's absolutely clear that there's a real need for change we are all very much aware of. So while design has been part of the destructive power, design has also a huge potential to support change. New design disciplines have appeared only a couple of years ago, such as speculative design or ontological design or regenerative design. I'm not sure if you have ever heard that before. But these design disciplines have been introduced in order to tackle these highly complex problems we're dealing with, yeah, in order to support change. And this change can be triggered through the power of agency, not to forget, this is the topic we discussed earlier. But also, as this slide shows, that before change happens, it needs to go through several steps. Yeah? And for instance, new seeing needs to happen first. Yeah? So in this context, artistic approaches and interventions, bless you. So in this context, artistic approaches and interventions come in as catalysts for transformative metaphors and narratives of alternative positive futures. This is where the arts and artistic approaches come in. Bless you. But as I said, new seeing requires to reimagine first. We need new visions which integrate humans on all levels to utilize all our strengths. And this leads me to the Symbio cene. Yeah? The Symbio cene, a term coined by Glenn Albrecht, a philosopher in Australia. And he coined this term as a positive vision to create momentum for transformative change for an age beyond the Anthropocene. And we as Symbio cene, yeah, as an organization, the NGO, which we mentioned briefly earlier, is using this term, Symbio cene, and the notion of Symbio cene, and we want to fill it with meaning, how we understand what needs to be done to support transformation. So while the contextual overarching idea of a Symbio cene as an era with enhanced, renewed human-nature relationships can be inspiring in itself, yeah? also as an agent, if you will, or with agency. We suggest that much conceptual work is needed to fill it with meaning. Only as a rich concept, will it be able to allow for the development of concrete and tangible ideas for the future and realistic steps to get there. So, something is happening, I'm not sure what. So, this is my final slide with content. I wanted to add this final slide because creativity in design is an innate human trait. Yeah? It's a capacity everybody's born with. It's almost like a human superpower, and we need to use it as best as we can. And this is a wonderful picture, I feel, that gives us this sort of positive outlook. Last but not least, this is us again from Symbio as the organization, the NGO. And this is it. Thank you very much for listening, and now we're ready for a discussion.